So carrying on from the previous chapter where we introduced the gizmo, let's explore this tool in some more depth. I'm going to go to the tool palette and select the Polymesh star. Draw it on the canvas and go into edit mode. Now, in the tool palette, these 3D meshes here, they may appear to be primitives, but they're not actually 3D primitives. For example, if I select the Ring 3D tool and then try and sculpt on it, I will get an error message saying it must be converted to a Polymesh 3D. The reason for that is there's an initialize menu here where you can change things like the radius and the coverage, and then you change it into a Polymesh by clicking Make Polymesh 3D. Now, if I have a Polymesh 3D open, for example, that star is a Polymesh by default. If I go to Subtool Append and then append in one of those primitives, it will automatically convert it to a Polymesh 3D. So these are the older way of working with primitives inside of ZBrush. Now the gizmo gives us this gear icon. If you click the gear icon, it opens up a menu of deformers and primitives. So you can select any of these primitives and convert your current Z tool into one of these primitives. So for example, if I select polycylinder, this gives me a polygon cylinder, and if I click and drag these cones, I can change the poly count, click the gear again, go back to Gizmo 3D, and we're able to manipulate it. So I can scale this, scale it in the Z axis, and now it is actually a sculptable polymesh. If I were to change to a sculpting brush, I could manipulate this surface with a sculpting tool, as you see here. Now if we go back to our gizmo and press the gear icon again, I can change to a different primitive. I can select polysphere, and that will convert the currently selected primitive into a polysphere. I can adjust my polygon settings for each axis. I can also select a Ring 3D. The Ring 3D has extra attributes in here. I can use the S radius cone to control this radius. I can control the outer taper using this cone, and I can use these sliders here to control the axis divisions. I can twist it. I can adjust the coverage here, so I can limit the amount of coverage of that, make it into a hook instead of a full circle, and I can change my divisions in this axis. If we change to the cylinder 3D, we have an extra attribute here which lets us create a hollow cylinder, like so, if we want to make a tube, and once again we can change our resolution like so in each axis. So these primitives are very handy for creating various types of objects. It's nice to be able to access primitives and their attributes directly inside of ZBrush here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and scale it out. I'll duplicate this subtool, and then we'll turn this into, let's say, a polysphere. I will increase my resolution to 18. And then we'll duplicate that, and then we'll turn this into a different primitive. This time, let's select a Ring 3D. And if I need to solo it, I can solo it so I can see it more clearly. I can scale it up. If I press the E key, I can scale it up and then press the gizmo again and access Ring 3D. And that will give me access to my settings here, so I can go back to things like the resolution, the coverage, and the taper. Hit the gear icon, go back to Gizmo 3D, and there we are. Now I can use my gizmo, as we've seen in the previous chapter, to orient these pieces and move them in relation to one another. Now, if we go back to the gear, we have a whole section down here of deformers, and these are very powerful and very good to know. We're going to step through the most important ones here and talk about them. We'll begin with Bend Arc. Bend Arc will bend the currently selected subtool. So right now I'm on the ring. I want to select the Polymesh cylinder. Go back to the gizmo gear icon, and we're going to select Bend Arc. So we have a bend arc here, and each one of these cones is going to control one particular element. So I can control the twist. Let's turn on frame mode so we can see what's happening here. I can control twist. I can come over here to this and control twist on this axis. I can control twist on this axis. Now, the white cones are going to give me radius controls, and the green cones are going to give me angles. So I can change the angle of my twist like this, or I can come over here, twist like this, adjust my white cone, turn that down. We can twist like this. Grab this green cone here, and we can adjust that. Go into our center. We can turn this up and change our radius like so. And we can change our twist like this. You see how the twist actually functions. So let's take our radius and turn that down into a negative value. And we can change our angle just by moving this cone around. There you go. So you can twist things like horns, for example, or tubes. And of course, each one of these axes you can independently manipulate. There we go. Now, if I click the gear icon, I can reset it, and that resets those settings. I can come back here, and I can twist along this angle, and I can change my angle slider here. Let's go to this one, and let's change the angle here. You see the effect that we get. We're able to twist this around each individual axis. Let's go to our next one here. Twist this. Let's change our radius, bring that down into a negative, and let's adjust the twist angle like this. Bring this over here. Well, that's making a bit of a mess. So let's go ahead and change our radius on that. There we go. So now you can see that we can create some pretty complex forms using this particular tool. And if I go to my gear, go to Gizmo 3D, I have now accepted this. This is a sculptable mesh. If I sculpt on this, I can smooth this and manipulate it. So we'll go back to our original shape. Go back to our gizmo, and we'll go to Bend Curve. Now, I find Bend Curve much easier to use than the Bend Arc. Bend Curve has these dots that are going in the Z-axis right now. So if I use the slider here, I can change my axis. Let's change it to run down the length of the tube, and we'll change our resolution. Turn that up, and the more points we have, the more control we have over the bending. I can change the fall off here, so I can change the scale. I can squeeze it, and I can twist it. So we grab this one, we can twist this one. Scale that down. Grab this one, maybe we want to scale this one up, and we'll change the twist on this. We'll twist this around this way. Take this one, continue that twist. Bring this one out, and we can scale that up, and then we can select this one and scale this one down. Press the gear icon and click accept, and that deformation has been applied to that surface. So we'll undo, go to our gear, and just reset it. Now we also have bevel. Now bevel will be easier to show. Now bevel will be easier to show on a cube. So let's change this into a polycube. And let's go to bevel. And here you can see we're able to add a bevel interactively to these surfaces. So right here we've got the bevel amount. We have our resolution control here. And we have our crease angle here. So we can control our creasing. Next, we have a crease control, which will just control the creasing on all the individual faces or the visible faces. I'm going to reset that. And now we'll check out deformer. Deformer is great. It's sort of a, it's similar to the lattices that you'll find in, for example, Maya. So what I will do is I will select some points, and then I can move those points. And I can change the divisions here. I can increase the resolution of my points. I can change the symmetry. Right now it's set to, if you mouse over this, it'll tell you it's either 1 for parallel or 2 for mirror. Currently it's set to 0 for none. So if I turn it on and then move these points, I need to make sure that I have a point selection here. So I will Control-Alt-Click. There we go. And let's move these around. And that moves with symmetry. I can control the smoothness. Let's go ahead and move these again, and then we'll change our smoothness. You see it changes the smoothness of that transition. And that is something that we can change up here with the stiffness or the smoothness slider here. And we can change our symmetry on this angle as well. Here we can change our smoothness and our symmetry, so we can adjust that. But as you see, as you change symmetry, it will reset the deformation. So you want to have your symmetry set before you go in and start making a lot of time and effort on changing your settings. Next, we have Deformer Hard. And Deformer Hard is just a hard version of the other deformer. You see it gives you a hard edge rather than a smooth transition. You just grab the points that you want to manipulate and then move them. If we click the gear again, we have Deformer Soft. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is a soft version of the deformer. We'll clear our mask and then select some points and then move them. Go back to our gear icon. Extender is interesting. Extender will extend the geometry. Now there's a lot of cones here, but it's basically the same thing for each axis. So if I grab this extender, I can extend in this axis. I can extend in this axis. This basically just allows you to extend the shape out and extrude along those faces. And it has the nice benefit here where it creates some polygrouping. So I could go into my B for brush, Z for Z modeler, grab the Z modeler brush, click OK. There's no subdivision levels on the mesh, so I can Q mesh, polygroup island, and I can just click drag this out and create banding like that based on that extensor. Go back to our transpose deformers again. So that was extender. We have a flatten tool. The flatten tool can be very, very handy. It literally just flattens along a particular axis. So we can flatten things down like this, which can be very handy. We also have, if we go back to our gear, sometimes it can be hard to see the gear. It's usually in the upper left-hand corner. We have the ability to inflate, which is the same, except it's inflating. So you can already see how we can create some pretty neat, complex shapes like this just using deformers. We also have the ability to multi-slice, and the multi-slice does exactly what it says. It slices along an edge. So here I've got the X resolution. I can set my slicing. Now it's going to be hard to see on something like this that already has a number of slices in it. So let's go to the polysphere, and let's go to multi-slice. And we'll increase our slicing here. You can see the effect that that has, and it's automatically going to triangulate and clean up the mesh as it goes. If this were a polygon cube, we'll do the same thing, and it should be even more apparent here. Multi-slice, I can slice in this direction, I can slice in this direction. Here I can control the width of my slice. I can turn down the resolution of it, so I can just have a single slice, or I can have multiple slices. Here I've got the ability to apply creasing, so I can put creasing on the faces, yes or no. So it's 0 is no, 1 is yes. We can do these other axis here and turn that down. And there we have some polygon slicing. Next we have offset, and offset will essentially just offset the mesh. It's sort of like transpose moving something. You just grab a cone and you can offset. So this could be handy if you're trying to arrange primitives together to make a more complex object. There is the offset. You could also mask part of the mesh and it's only going to offset what's unmasked. Project primitive is one of my favorites. Now, project primitive is fantastically useful. This is a means of taking a primitive shape and projecting it into a mesh. So right now, that gizmo inside the cube is projecting a sphere. If I bring it forward, you see it projects a sphere onto the surface. If I scale it up, I can scale up that sphere. If I bring this out far enough, it will clip and become a negative impression. As you see there, it will subtract. If I bring that back, it will become a projected sphere again on the surface. Now I can clip using these sort of handles here, these white handles. I can clip this shape. These cones here will control the projected primitive. I can control the blend with the red cone. I can control new surface and accept with this. This will accept it. It'll basically bake it down and make a new surface, which I can no longer edit. I'll have to create a new primitive projection to continue editing. Over here, I can control things like the primitive axis, X, Y, and Z, or 1, 2, and 3. And for a sphere, it's not going to be all that apparent. Here, we can change our primitive type. I can go to a cylinder, or I can change to, let's bring this out and see which one this is. Here we have a torus. I can change to, there we go, change back to the sphere, or there we go, the cylinder. And here I can change my modifiers for that cylinder. So that I can sharpen that into a diamond shape or bring it back to its default position as a cylinder. Now, when I'm happy with that, I can accept by clicking the accept button. And then I've got a new projection primitive. I can move this up. You see what it's done is it's left behind the piece that it's already created. Let's scale our projection down and let's change it back to, let's say, a sphere. We can make kind of a spike with this. I'll turn off frame mode because it makes it a little bit easier to see. There we go. And bring this up. Now I can offset this to the side. I can have this projecting out. I can also, over here, I can change my X opacity. So if I turn that down, it sort of turns down the volume of the projection in each axis. I can turn down the opacity this way. I can also adjust the maximum displacement. This allows me to clip the displacement. You see I can clip that down. I can adjust the opacity, which is sort of like turning the volume up and down on it. And I can change the grouping. So I can apply polygrouping or no. Down here in the lower corner, we have the ability to adjust symmetry. So we have X symmetry. I can turn on X symmetry if I would like to, and that will give me symmetry in the X-axis. So I can have two of these. I can have Z symmetry, and that will apply it to the Z direction as well, and I can have Y symmetry. So you can create some really useful, interesting shapes with this particular tool. Project Primitive is one that I use quite a lot. Again, if you are complete with this particular one, you can accept it. And now you've got a brand new chance to take this, move it, and then do another projection. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can create a projection, accept it, and then move that same shape over and continue making new shapes. And you can manipulate this projected primitive like you would any other primitive shape in ZBrush, just using this gizmo. If I want to create geometry from that, easiest way to do it is hit the gear and accept. And now that is a polygon object, just like so. So moving on from Project Primitive, we have remeshing options. So there's Remesh by Dynamesh, Remesh by Union, and Remesh by ZRemesher. So I am going to go to the top of my list here, and I am going to turn off solo mode, and I'm going to scale this down. Remesh will allow us to basically group objects together. So I'll take this and I will merge down for our torus. Let's bring this down like this, and we'll merge down. So I've basically merged all of these into a single subtool. clear any masking on there, and then go to the gizmo, and we will do remesh by Dynamesh. And what this does is it allows us to just remesh with a target polygon count. So I want a target polygon count of 500,000, and I can see what I end up getting with each one of these target polygon counts. It's actually pretty handy. You have Dynamesh remesh now. We exit out of that, click accept, and then we have remeshed those together to that target polygon count. Now, you can also remesh using remesh by union, and this is really nice. This will not Dynamesh. It doesn't change anything but the borders where the meshes join, and this is really handy for hard surface. If I click remesh by union, it does a union remesh, so everywhere those meshes are joined together, if we zoom in, you see it's cut new geometry, and it's joined them. So there's no more interlocking, intersecting sort of geometry in there. This is all just a single volume. Lastly, we have remesh by ZRemesher. So if I select that, I can set my target polygon count. Let's set our target polygon count to 5,400 some faces. And this will run ZRemesher on this object. So this is a very handy way to go about accessing ZRemesher and dialing in exactly the polygon count that you want. That and being able to dial in your target polygon count for Dynamesh is pretty handy. So we'll let that finish processing and see what we get. May or may not be useful. Oh, there you go. That turned out pretty good. Now, of course, this doesn't give you all the options you have if you go into actual tool geometry ZRemesher, but it's quick and it lets you dial right into a target polygon count. So that is pretty handy. So if I go back to this, I want to illustrate for you something. If I go to polygroups, autogroup, those are still separate objects, and they have been ZRemeshed together. So what I would like to do is make sure that they ZRemesh as a single volume. So that's why I would go to remesh by union first, then I would remesh by ZRemesher, and I would set my target polygon count, and here I can change my symmetry if I need to. Let's bring that back up to somewhere around the same polygon count that we had before. And now, because I have union remeshed these objects, they will remesh as a single volume. Whereas before, it was still recognizing those faces that are sitting inside the volume of the other primitives. So it wasn't remeshing it as a single volume. It was remeshing the individual parts. And there we go. It is now remeshed. And if we zoom in, you can see that it's actually a single volume now. I would probably want to increase my resolution to get sharper edges, but that is the functionality. So returning to our gear, we have remesh by decimation, which will remesh by decimation. It will decimate the mesh. So here we have the option to protect our borders, and we have keep UVs, just like you would have in Decimation Master. And we have symmetry options here, and our target polygon count. We have two cones here. One is for use polypaint, and one is for the polypaint weight. Now, if you have watched the video on Decimation Master, you'll understand that these allow you to control whether or not polypaint remains on there and how much weight is given to polypaint in terms of the decimation count. So we can set our value here. We'll set this to, well, our target polygon count. We're currently 19,000 faces, so let's maybe set this to 2,567. There we go. So it's a very, very quick decimator. Very quick. Turn that up. There you go. So these are well hidden inside the deformer menu, but they're really handy. And if you just remember they're there and use them, they can be quite beneficial. So we have rotate, and rotate will rotate the object. Pretty simple. Again, these sort of transpose, rotate options are really useful when you're organizing or arranging primitives together into a single object. We have also scale, and then there's skew. And skew does exactly what it says. It will skew the mesh. So if I click and drag these, I can skew on any selected angle, like so. So you see the effect that that has. It's basically sort of skewing or shearing the object. We have slide, And slide, if I come over here, you see that I've got my symmetry options, as I do in most of the others. You're going to have symmetry options in this corner, and then I can adjust my slice width, inflate, and I've got this blue center here. If I move that center, that will change what we get with our slide. As I move around, I can change the axis. So here we go. I can change the slice width. I can change my inflate. I can make this go in or out. It's a really nice way to put sort of banding on something or add complexity to a surface. Again, if you want to adjust the symmetry, you can turn on symmetry with Z symmetry. You can do X symmetry. You can apply creasing. You can adjust our width and then just grab that blue dot and you can move this around. Bring it over here to the sides. There we go. We return to our gear. We can smooth, which is essentially smoothing. It's pretty self-explanatory, except it does allow us to smooth in selected axes. So that could be quite handy if you want to keep one part sharp and another part smooth. We can do that here. We can change our smooth amount like this. Smooth all will just smooth everything. There is no axis control on that. So it's similar to taking the deformation smooth slider to your work. Smooth slider being right here. However, this is a bit stronger. There's smooth, smooth all, and then stretch. And stretch does exactly what it says. It will stretch the object. So some of these deformers are quite simple, but they can be very powerful when you combine them together and you've got a clear idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish. So beyond stretch, we click the gear icon again. We have subdivide, which will subdivide the mesh. And here we've got controls for the faceted division and smooth division. So I can make smooth divisions, or I can do faceted divisions, which maintains the faceting. So if we do, let's say we convert this into a polycube and then go to subdivide, if I use faceted divide, it keeps the overall hard surface quality of that cube, whereas smooth divide softens it down considerably. And that's the difference there. It's similar to taking this cube, going into tool geometry, and turning off the smooth modifier, dividing a couple times, then turning it on and adding the rest of your divisions. That lets you keep the hard surface volume of that cube. Whereas if I were to just add my subdivisions with the SMT modifier on, it softens it down. Go back to the gear. And now we have taper and twist. And these are two of my favorites. So taper will taper objects down. I use this a lot for making weapons and points and things like that. Here we can change the exponent, which is sort of the fall off, which is very, very handy. You can see what we get from that. I can taper the base as well. And then we have twist. And twist is great. It twists around an axis. You can already see how very, very handy this could be. We can twist like this. And then divide, we get this nice twisting form. So it's a pretty useful tool there. Let's take this, let's undo those subdivisions, and let's go to our gizmo. And let's do a polycylinder. I'll increase the resolution of the polycylinder, and let's go ahead and scale it up. And let's do a project primitive. I'll take that project primitive and move it over here, scale it down, and let's scale it up in the x-axis, and let's change our primitive type. Currently, our primitive type is set to, let's see, where are we? Primitive type, I want to set this to cylinder. and I want to get this as a negative projection. Bring this out here. Bring that out until we get a negative. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So now I'm going to scale this up, and I'm going to use my clipping to clip this down to here. And I'm going to clip this down to here. There we go. And now we're going to change our symmetry. So I am going to turn on. Let's go over here. We've got, by the way, the modifier allows you to make modifications to the overall size. I'm not sure if we touched on that in the previous talk about this particular tool. So we've got our primitive type and our primitive axis. So I want my symmetry. So I want radial symmetry. Turn that on. And I want the radial symmetry down the y-axis. There we go. So we can increase our symmetry count. Let's bring that to here. There we go. So I want my symmetry going radially around the object. And let's turn that up. There we go. So I will go ahead and accept this. Go back to my gizmo. Accept. Let's look at it into frame mode, and let's go ahead and remesh this. We'll remesh this by, let's say, Z-remesher. And let's set our polygon count. We want to have enough geometry running down the length of this that we can twist it effectively. There we go. So now I'm going to apply a twist modifier. And the twist modifier that we just saw is under Gizmo, Twist. If I click and drag, I can twist that up this way, continue the twist that way, hit the gear icon, and accept. And there we go. That is a very, very quick and easy way to make a very complex form. So imagine trying to create that in Maya in the same amount of time. So the modifiers under the Gizmo are incredibly powerful, and hopefully this has given you some inspiration on ways that you can take these and use them yourself. My favorites are Twist and Project Primitive, and the remeshing options. I think those are the ones that I use the most often, as well as the Bend Deformer. In our lecture on Booleans, you will actually see me utilize some of these as well. I'll use the taper and the bend curve in that particular lesson to create some complex or some compound mechanical shapes. So let's take a look at these deformers in action. I have a Polymesh star on screen in edit mode, accessed through the tool palette here. I'll press the gear icon on the gizmo and turn this into a cylinder 3D. Now the cylinder 3D has the interior radius control, which I can turn down, and I can give this a ring quality. Now I'm going to go to my subtool menu, and I will duplicate this subtool, press the gear icon again, and I will turn this one into a polycylinder. Now the polycylinder, I can adjust my resolution using the slider here, press the W key, and now you see we have two nested cylinders, and I will just scale this inner cylinder down slightly. Turn on the pizza box stack, so we are manipulating all subtools, and we'll scale this down in the Z-axis. We're going to create a shield. I will select the outermost ring, that first polymesh cylinder, And I will go to my gizmo. Let's turn off the multiple modifier, and then I'm going to go to project primitive. Now I will bring this primitive up. Let's go ahead and grab the gizmo here, bring that up, and we will scale this down. Now I want to change this into a spike. So we're going to change the primitive type and see if we can't get something a little bit more interesting. Otherwise, we will change the parameters on the sphere itself. So we'll stay with the sphere, and I'm going to go to the modifier, and I'm going to turn it down, and that's going to give us this nice spike look here. And I can adjust this. If we move it in a little bit, we can change where it's placed on the object. Let's just get a good placement here. Now remember, I can also change my clipping here if I want to, but I like those points on the end. Now we want these to run around the perimeter, so let's turn on radial symmetry. So let's come over here and grab this, turn radial symmetry on. Well, first off, we want our radial symmetry running around the z-axis, so let's turn that up and turn radial symmetry on. And then we'll drag this up and we get our instances running around the perimeter like this. Now if I turn down my scale on this, I can adjust it further. And there we go. Let's go ahead and move it forward just a little bit if we can. There we go. And if I am happy with this, then I will accept. We've just turned that into geometry. Now I'm going to alt-click on the inner cylinder, and we want to give it some bulge, like the front bulge of the sphere. So I will once again go into my gizmo, and I will do a project primitive. Now I'm going to turn down the modifier on this primitive, so you just have to rotate a little bit to get your bearings on where your manipulators are. So we're going to change this modifier back to a sphere. There we go. And I'm going to scale this up. Now I want to clip the back off. I don't need it bulging on the back, so we'll clip that, and then we can scale it down in the z-axis like so. And then that will give us our nice front bulge on that shield. We'll scale that up a bit. Maybe bring it out just a little bit more. Now we have the modifier slider that we can adjust that will change the overall shape. We can give it a little bit more of a diamond quality like that. And if I'm happy with that, what I will do is I will come over here and click accept, and that bakes that into the model. Now I can take my gizmo and let's move this back in space. So this is creating a new shape now. And as it moves back, we can create the scalloping in the back of the shield, the concavity. I want to adjust my modifier again, bring that back up to a spherical form. And there we go. We can accept that. And then drop back into the gear and click accept. So now we've created geometry from that. If we look at frame mode, you can see the underlying geometry that's created. If we want to clean that up, we can go to our gear icon. We can go to Remesh by Z-Remesher. And our cone here is going to give us our polygon count. So the target polygon count right now is 958 faces. So we'll just tap that. Probably stay around there. Let's do 958. ZBrush will calculate, and there we go. That's quite a nice remesh just out of that deformer. We'll do the same for the outermost ring. So this, whilst it's a nice shape, it's not the best topology. So let's just go ahead and get a nice workable topology for now using the same modifier. So I'll click the gear icon and accept. Click the gear icon again. We'll go to Remesh by Z-Remesher. I could also remesh by Dynamesh on this one, but we'll try Z-Remesher, and this is probably going to require a bit of a higher polygon count. So we'll turn this up. Let's drop this down to 10. Oops. Let's do 10 or 1250. Let's try 1250. Let go. ZBrush will calculate. And then that's the resulting topology. Now, if I'm not happy with that, I can always undo it, and I can increase that resolution. And And this doesn't have to be a final topology. We just want something that is workable for sculpting, and then we can revisit it with the ZRemesher proper under the tool menu. Let's bring this up higher because there's a lot of facets on this that we want to capture. ZBrush will process and turn off frame mode. We just want to check what we're getting from that. I'm still not terribly happy, so let's go ahead and raise this resolution up higher. And there we go. That's a much, much better surface. We don't have the triangulation or the strangeness going on there, and this is something that we can now sculpt on. If I go back to the gear icon and accept, and we can Alt-click to select this subtool here, we can add a couple subdivision levels. And if we just want to add some kind of hammered metal quality to this, I'll take the standard brush with the spray stroke, and I'll select a hard-edged round alpha, like alpha 6. Go to our spray stroke, and let's turn the placement up so we get more spread. And then if I hold down the Alt key, make sure our Z intensity isn't turned all the way up. Well, it's far too strong, so let's turn that down. Turn our Z intensity down. Turn our draw size down. Turn our Z intensity up just a little bit here. And there we go. We can get this nice sort of hammered quality to this metal here. I'll add another couple subdivision levels so we've got more to work with. There we go. And then I will Alt-click on the outermost ring of the shield, and we can add noise to this, or we can manually sculpt in. We'll go to the Noisemaker. If you haven't seen the video on Noisemaker, it's a tool that we talk about in an entirely separate chapter. We go to Surface and open up Noise, and it allows us to add procedural surface noise to an object. So here you can see we've got this nice overlay noise, kind of makes it look like some cast metal. We can change this if we go to the strength. We can adjust the strength on that. We can adjust the scale here. So let's just give it a nice overall noise. Click OK. And this is just a procedural noise projection. If I divide my mesh, right now it's only 50,000 faces, so let's divide it a few times so we've got the resolution to carry this noise. I'll go to Surface and click Apply to Mesh, and that will bake that down into the actual surface. So there we go. So just using ZBrush primitives and the Gizmo deformers, we have created a shield. So hopefully this has helped illustrate some of the ways that you can actually utilize these tools to create objects, models, and shapes here inside of ZBrush. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you in the next. Thanks for watching.